Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to Faith and Life, where I share my personal contemplations about faith, life, and God. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. Thank you to everyone who watched my previous broadcast. Thank you for your shares, your likes, your comments. I mean, some people even told me I was looking very put together in the video. Well, when you are sitting before your webcam, you most likely will be looking put together because I was just all stifled. It's difficult to be talking to a camera, not seeing an audience. The pitch of my voice was just going. I don't even want to tell you the story behind that recording, but I'm just glad I was able to get it out. And okay, so today, my name is Aderonke, in case I didn't remember to say that. And welcome to this podcast again. Today, I want to talk about the power of remembering, the power of remembering. And I think this is crucial because as children of God, one of the reasons why the enemy has a chance to harass us or why we don't walk in the fullness of God's blessings in our lives is because we are quick to forget the things that God has done in the past. This is a very serious matter. In the book of Deuteronomy alone, about more than nine times or thereabout, God kept instructing the children of Israel not to forget the things that He had done for them. You know why? Because as human beings, we have the natural tendency to forget, especially the good, especially the good. If we are not intentional about keeping the testimonies of God, we will lose them. I spoke about the account in Psalm 78, which you will find a very interesting read, even regarding this topic. And you find that that psalm was talking about how many wonderful things that God had done for the children of Israel, and yet they doubted Him and provoked Him and tempted Him several times. And why did that keep happening? It was because they did not have capacity or a stable capacity to remember the goodness of God in their lives. In the story of David and Goliath, what happened there? A Goliath was coming to harass the entire Israeli army for 40 days and 40 nights, and nobody had the guts to take him on because why? They forgot. They forgot who they were. You will see that the moment that David came on scene, the first thing he said that, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? What was David talking about? Circumcision. They had a covenant of circumcision with God. David was, first of all, recalling the covenant that God had with them. He was saying that I am a man who is in covenant with God. And that's the reason why this Goliath does not have a right to harass me. He does not have power over me. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care his size. I don't care his pedigree. I don't care his history. I have a covenant with God, and that just totally drops whatever history or pedigree or CV or resume that Goliath has come to present. And so when we are confronted with situations and challenges, we need to remember the God who has moved mountains before for us, the God who has parted red seas, the God who has, taken up kings and taken their inheritances and given to us. We need to remember the goodness of God. We need to keep the faithfulness and the character of God before our eyes at all times. So the danger of not doing that is that the enemy begins to harass us. What is a molehill suddenly is magnified and it begins to look like a mountain. You that you've been healed of more serious ailment before suddenly have an headache and you won't rest. You can't have peace. You can't believe God that you can be restored. And whatever your own case or situation may be, God has done it before. If not in your life, He's done it in the life of others. And if you keep the testimony of God before your eyes, you will see Him do it again and again. Because when we remember, we force God to react. Well, maybe the word is not force, maybe, but we just give God, we allow God to again display His greatness and His goodness in our lives all over again. When we remember, it eliminates pride in our lives because actually pride is looking at yourself, thinking that you're the one that will do this thing. But when you remember what God has brought you through in those moments when you're so self focused and self conscious, it takes the focus off of you back to God. Remembering will take the focus off of you back to God. Okay, so it eliminates pride when we take time to remember the goodness of God in our lives. It also builds our trust in God. Because David had killed the bear, he killed the lion, and all of those happened because God was with him. He built trust in him to know that he could take down a Goliath. And so, if you also can remember the things that God has brought you through, brought your family through, then you can believe Him again for the next thing that you're trusting Him for. So, your faith is stirred up. Remembering is a way to stir up our faith in God and to believe Him again to do the impossible. Also, it increases the blessings of God in our lives. Like when you are somebody who remembers the goodness of God and you're in constant gratitude for the goodness of God, the faithfulness of God in your life, you have a higher tendency to see that multiplied in your life than somebody who doesn't remember, whose focus is not on the goodness of God. The Bible says in the book of Psalm 112, I think it says that the eyes of a righteous man are fixed, trusting in the Lord, that he is not afraid of evil tidings. The way not to be afraid of evil tidings, take for instance, there's Corona. There's so many challenges that we are confronted with daily in our world. And they are always questioning the capacity of God, in our lives, the ability of God, and all that. But when we remember, okay, then when our eyes are fixed, trusting in God, then we are not afraid of evil tidings. Like they are, they are mutually exclusive. Okay, you cannot be fixed on God and then still be afraid of what other people are afraid of. Anytime you catch yourself in fear, check where your focus is. Your focus is probably already, off of God. So, okay, like I always want to keep this brief. How do we remember? How do I help myself to remember? We have to be intentional about remembering. You have to be intentional in your personal times of fellowship with God. Have times that you just express your gratitude to God. Sometimes I sit in my times of fellowship and I just go back to all the way back to when I was born. Father, thank you, how you kept me in my mother's womb. I could have ended up as a miscarriage. I mean, my pregnancy could have ended up aborted or anything, but here I am. I was successfully birthed. I went through all the childhood challenges and all that. I made it through. I'm an adult now. I begin to thank God with specificity. I begin to recall the goodness of God in my life. And then in my adult life, the times when I became aware, I begin to thank God about those times too. How He saved me, the times He's forgiven me, the times He's been good to me, the mercies He's delivered me from, the times He's provided for me, healed me. I begin to specifically recall and rehearse those testimonies before Him. Sometimes when I'm with my siblings, when I visit my siblings, sometimes we sit and I say, let's take turns to just talk about the things that God has done before, the ones you can remember. At least there was a time when we were together, when we were still younger and together as a nuclear family. So I'll say, let's remember from those times some of the things that God has done. And then we will take turns, and thank God. And somebody will mention an instance of God's faithfulness, and we will thank God again. We will thank God again. Those are some of those events date back as long as 10, 20 years or more than, and then we are thanking God again for them as if they're just happening. So you have to be intentional. And then you rehearse the faithfulness of God to other people as well. Don't be tired of sharing your testimony. Don't be tired. There's no testimony that is stale. It's a lie of the enemy. So make sure that you are constantly rehearsing your testimony to yourself, to God, to other people around you. Let them know that this person know, mama testimony. Okay, so rehearse your testimonies. And also it helps when you go back to the scriptures and you read the testimonies that are in the scripture. Sometimes when I feel overwhelmed with the situation or it looks like the enemy is harassing me in my mind, I like to read particularly the story of Sennacherib and how God conquered him. I mean, that's a classic story if you ask me. This guy was telling the Israelites that, you know what, you will pee in your pants. He was talking to the Hebrews, was saying all manners of ridiculous things, things that could intimidate a Things that would intimidate any human being, okay, except you're assured of the God that is with you. That man was harassing them, he was saying terrible things, just to instill fear in them so that he could take them out. But see the way that God didn't even let a battle happen at all. That is so amazing. I mean, I find that story. In fact, in my Yoruba parlance, I coined the name for God out of that story, and I said, "Ẹ̀rù jẹ̀jẹ̀ tó ká síná kérúbù láyà." This guy has an history. Sennacherib did have an history. He and his fathers had never been defeated in battle. It was not a joke. This man was a warrior, you know, and he confronted, and Ezekiah turned to God, and God took this guy out without even allowing them to raise a sword. When I read stories like that, my faith is inspired. I feel pumped. I know that this is the God that I serve. And so, who at that mountain before me? What is your name? What is your pedigree? Because we are going to take you out. God and I, we got you. Okay, so we read Bible stories and let them meditate on these stories. Imagine them. Don't just speed read. You go pause to imagine, contemplate those stories, and let the essence of the stories begin to sink deep down in your heart. And from there, I mean, I just get into worship sometimes. Like I'm thanking God, for those instances in the scriptures, and as I begin to worship God, I am the one that did this, did that, apart from the ones he's done in my life, you see, my faith is built up and I'm able to take on the next challenge and overcome. Okay, you can also keep a gratitude journal. That's what I would usually call a diary of hope. Have a diary of hope. You can keep a gratitude journal where you deliberately sit down and you write down, the things that God has done for you. And anytime you feel discouraged, you can pick up your diary of hope, look into it, and you begin to rehearse the faithfulness of God. Another thing you can do is to meditate, and this is deep thinking. I mean, I think all of the other things I've mentioned involve meditation in some at some level of some form or the other. So meditate, but you can deliberately take time to meditate on the faithfulness of God in your life. Just sit and think about it. Just sit and think about it. Ponder it. Don't lose your wonder. Don't lose your wonder. Just revisit the things that God has done in your past, in your family, people around you, and just give Him praise for it. And then it would stir up your faith. Another thing you can do to remember is to practice the presence of God. This is also very important. Always remember that it's important that we remember that God is with us at all times. Practice His presence. Know that God, this God, who is the creator of heaven and earth, is inside you, is with you. So, whatever situation confronts you, I think the first thing you should remind yourself of is that I am not alone. God is right here with me, and God is going to pull me through. He's going to see me through this. I remember there was a time I was walking in a place that had a lot of, it was stacked up with clothes and all that. I was working on a sewing machine, and a small knot fell out of the machine I was using. And if I didn't find that knot, I was not going to be able to continue to use the machine any further. And it was in the middle of the night, and I really needed to finish what I was doing. So first, I was going to be anxious and worried and all that, but I just calmed down. I remember that no, God is with you, and with God, nothing is impossible. And the moment I said that to myself, the moment I thought that, I just said, okay, Holy Spirit, help me to locate this, because this is like looking for a needle in a haystack. I don't know how I can find this here. And the moment I said that and trusted that God was with me, I began to look on the floor and all that. And then suddenly my mind went to a um, a box of clothes beside me, and it was like, look there. And it looked like the most improbable place where I would have found that knot. But then as I lifted off the lid and picked up the first piece of fabric there, the knot, the very tiny knot I was looking for, was sitting right under it. And but if the scenario had been different, if I had started out being worried, being anxious, giving up and say, it can't be done and all of that, that would have been the end of it. Okay, so you practice the presence of God. It helps you when you consciously bring yourself to the memory, to the remembrance that God is with me. Because sometimes we tend to forget. We think that we left God in church on Sunday, or maybe you left him at home in your morning devotion, and now you are confronted with real life issues and God is not here. No, he's always there. So you might make it a habit to consciously practice the presence of God. You get into a new space, you move from your house to your office, remember in that moment that God is with me. On this job today, God is with me. In this home, God is with me. As I'm parenting my children, God is with me. As I'm attending to customers, God is with me. So it will lead me to do the right things, say the right things, act the right way, and all of that. Just practice the presence of God. It's going to help us. Okay, okay, okay. So I think that's just about it. And if we keep up these practices of remembering, one thing is sure, we will have repeated testimonies in our lives. I see the life of David as a compendium of testimonies. And because David is one man that was always remembering, he kept himself in constant remembrance of the goodness and the faithfulness of God. David would speak to his soul and say, "Forget not the benefits of God." In Psalm 103, verse 2, it says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Forget, not all his benefit. Forget not all his benefits." And then he went on to begin to talk about those benefits. He healed your diseases, he forgave your iniquities, and he delivered your soul from destruction. He renews your youth like the eagle. He began to recount the blessings and the faithfulness of God. If you are somebody who practices this, if you keep the memories of God's character and faithfulness, his loving kindness, his mercy before you at all times, one thing, the enemy will find it difficult to harass you. If you're somebody that is laden constantly with guilt, with condemnation, with despair, with hopelessness, check it. It's probably because you are not keeping the memories of God before your face. So start doing that, and I trust God that you begin to have a very wonderful experience, in your walk with God. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you so very much for joining me. I'll still appreciate your likes, your shares, and your comments. And if there's anything you want me to talk about, please feel free to drop a comment, drop your questions, and I will get back here and attend to it. And if you feel I was a little more relaxed in this video, let me know. Tell me what you think I can improve on. Thank you so very much. I'll see you on another podcast. Bye.